Hi everyone, I'm Eli. I'm a certified and licensed speech-language pathologist and owner of slpsmart.com. Today, I want to talk about 6 early language strategies and how you can use them to support your child's speech and language development right now. I'm talking today, whether you're an SLP, a parent, or other professional. I want you to know that early intervention gives families and children the opportunity to build a foundation for the skills that are going to lead to a more positive outcome, right? So taking action is going to be more valuable than using the wait and see approach. Wait and see if they grow out of it approach. First, I want to debunk a couple of misconceptions that I sometimes hear from families. Some bilingual families have shared with me that they've heard their child's speech or language delay is a result of being exposed to 2 languages. False. Research suggests that it's just more language exposure. It's a positive thing. Some families have shared with me that they've heard that incorporating sign language is a bad thing because it makes it so your child doesn't talk. We know this is false. Giving your child another modality or way to communicate is a positive thing. All right, let's get into it. Number 1, communicative temptations, which is a fancy way of saying giving your child a reason or an opportunity to communicate. We do this by putting desired items out of reach but within view. If your child is able to satisfy their wants and needs independently, then it's going to be less likely that they're going to be coming to you, which means less communication interactions and less opportunities to learn. Let me dive into some detail. I always show families what I mean by grabbing a small box of cars or blocks. I'll get on the child's level and I'll hold the box. I might even shake it a little. Usually the child will come over and reach for the box or try to open it themselves. Great. I just created an opportunity for communication. If I then choose to dump the box of toys on the floor or the table, it becomes a free-for-all. The child now has all the toys in the box, so it's likely they aren't going to be coming to me. But if I take the lid off and give them 1 or 2 toys at a time, they're going to continue to be engaged with me. If I can continue to keep them engaged with me, I'm going to continue to be purposeful with my words. The next strategies will make it clear what I mean when I say purposeful with my words. My best tip is to remember that it's easier to start with the high interest item and give it to the child rather than the child has the item that they already want and you're trying to take it away to use this communication interaction strategy. So we're thinking about how you can modify your environment to create more opportunities for communication, thus meaning more practice. A really great example is shelves. You could put up shelves in your child's playroom or bedroom. Look like organizing some of their toys in bins rather than just having them all across the floor. I've also had lots of parents tell me they were successful using the strategy during mealtime. So for example, if your child loves Cheerios, instead of just pouring a bunch of Cheerios in front of your child, you could give your child 2 or 3 at a time and model that functional language. You've created an opportunity for communication because they can't satisfy their want for more Cheerios without you. Now this is a very interactive form of play. Different children will respond differently. You are an expert on your child. It's okay if after 2 minutes you stop because your child is getting frustrated. This can be a big adjustment in communication interaction styles. Your child may be used to having access to all of those toys rather than in bins or on shelves, so it can create a little bit of frustration. So I'd recommend starting off slow, seeing how your child responds, and going from there. Alright, it's time for me to clarify what I meant when I said being purposeful with your words. Our second strategy is naming. This is a strategy I generally use when a child is still working on communicating their basic wants and needs. Or if there are specific words that a family wants their child to know, whether that's because they think it will be valuable in their child's daily routine or reduce their child's frustration. The first step is to choose target words, or words that are going to allow your child to communicate their basic wants and needs across communication settings. So whether they're at the park, eating lunch, or getting ready for bed. Remember, the more opportunities to hear a word means the more opportunities to learn that word. It can take a child thousands of times to hear a word before they actually use it themselves. Hence why parents generally say, I know they understand what I'm saying, but they're not using those same words. I've heard some parents and other professionals share with me that they've heard vague words like more aren't as valuable as very specific words. I understand where they're coming from, But that's only true when your child can communicate their basic wants and needs across communication settings. I want you to picture this. Your child's at the park and it appears they need a little bit of help, but they're still learning the sign or word for help. A more specific word like apple isn't as valuable contextually, right? Versus if they're already communicating their basic wants and needs and they can sign and say help, saying help apple in a situation like lunchtime is going to be more valuable. But firstly, they need to be able to use those words that are going to allow them to communicate across different communication settings. If your child is already able to communicate their basic wants and needs, so some examples of those would be like more, want, help, stop, then a more specific word like apple can be extremely useful because now your child can say help, apple, when you have an apple on your counter and they can't reach it. So to recap, it's important that your child is able to communicate their basic wants and needs with those more general words. If a child isn't using a word, or maybe they're just using the sign or word at home, but nowhere else, that just means that they need more practice. I've had a lot of success with this strategy, picking more general words like more, want, help, stop, that allow children to communicate their basic wants and needs across communication settings before I move on to more specific words. So you can think of target words that you think are going to help your child communicate across different communication settings and reduce their frustration. So you're going to pick one of these target words that you come up with, and we're going to pair that with the communication temptation strategy we talked about earlier. How are you going to do this? Think back to our example of having the box of toys in the bin on our lap. You're going to continue to be purposeful with your words and use this as an opportunity to use one of your target words. So, for example, if the target word is more, I'm holding the bin of toys. I take one or two toys out. I'm going to hold the toys for a second while the child is looking at me. They're reaching for the toys. I will say and sign more, and I'm really going to exaggerate it. Then I'm going to hand the desired toy to the child. Great. You just created another opportunity for your child to hear and see the word more, providing them with another opportunity to learn it. One tip is to hold the toy in front of your mouth or your face when you're signing or saying the target word. So for example, more. I want the child to see my mouth because I want them to see how my mouth moves and where it is when I make specific sounds and say certain words. Our third strategy is pausing. This means increasing the amount of time you're waiting for your child to respond. Language is complex, especially for an early language learner. This means pausing in anticipation to give your child time to hear, understand what was said or asked, and to respond. You're going to show them that you're waiting by actively looking for a response. If they don't respond, you're going to repeat it again. The rule for this is waiting up to 10 or 15 seconds for them to respond, and then waiting another 5 seconds or until it feels awkward. If they don't respond, you can repeat what was said again and wait 10 to 15 seconds, then another 5 more before providing an appropriate response. You're an expert on your child. I've had children who will patiently wait 15 seconds and kind of just actively look at me. Sometimes after 2 seconds, the child is climbing me like a jungle gym trying to get that toy. Let's talk about how you can pair pausing with the first two strategies we talked about. While I'm using communicative temptations and naming, I'm going to incorporate increased wait time or pausing to see if that child is going to use the word that I'm emphasizing. So for example, earlier when we talked about our example with more, right? I'm waiting to see if that child is going to sign or say more. Our fourth strategy is choices. The reason our fourth strategy is choices is because we want to encourage our child to use words more than just yes and no. I always like to make choices visual, so I'm going to hold them up so the child can see. This is super important. Do not require the child to use only words when they're making a choice. The child can make a choice by pointing, using gestures, or words. The most important thing is that you're naming the chosen item clearly. I also really like this strategy because all children have moments when it feels like it's their way or the highway. So it's a really great strategy when you want to provide the child with a sense of control despite providing two acceptable choices. Let's use a really common example. It's time to clean up and your child isn't having it. They want to keep playing, but not cleaning up right now isn't a choice. I could give the choice, cleanup time, trains, or blocks. I'm giving them an opportunity to have control over the situation. Again, I don't care whether they pick trains or blocks, but to them, it's important because they're making the decision. So I provided the choice, trains or blocks. I'm holding the items up so they can see them visually. They can hear it because I'm saying it verbally, right? Trains or blocks. And most importantly, I'm incorporating that third strategy, pausing. So I'm giving them sufficient time to hear what I said, right? To hear the choice, to understand what was said, and then to generate that response. If I provide that choice and I incorporate that wait time, 10 to 15 seconds, and they don't respond, I'm going to repeat it again. If they still don't respond, I usually say you pick or I pick, and then I'll pick the choice, right? I gave them 2 opportunities where I incorporated that wait time to make that decision and have control over the situation. Remember, you can be compassionate about your child's feelings and do everything right, and there's still going to be opportunities where there's big feelings. That's normal. Just remember, to help your child learn, you need to model that appropriate language and behavior. Our 5th strategy is gestures or signing. Use a gesture or sign when you name something. This can really help your child understand what you're saying. When I talk about sign language, your child may begin to use signs before they say the actual words. Completely fine. You're just going to continue to say the word verbally with the sign. So for example, if your child's signing more, when you see your child sign more, you're going to pair the word more onto what they're saying. So your child says, you're going to say more, right? You're giving your child another opportunity to hear the word that they're learning. All right, our last strategy, number 6, is known as expansions or copy and add. Expansions is repeating back to your child what they said and adding one word onto it. So essentially, you're making their statement more complex. I love this strategy because it doesn't matter whether your child's using 1 word or 3 words, you can expand on what they're saying and repeat it back and provide them with a more complex version of what they're doing independently. You're modeling slightly more complex language and supporting their language development. This strategy pairs really well with choices and pausing. So for example, I could say more ball or more dinosaur. If the child says more ball, I can use expansions and add 1 more word to make it more complex, and I could repeat back more ball, please, or want more ball. All right, now that we've talked about all 6 strategies, you can see how they connect and overlap. I want you to remember that the biggest takeaway and our goal with these strategies is to reduce your child's frustration when it comes to communication. So this means with all 6 strategies, I'm never going to require the child to say the word before getting something in return or getting that desired item, because they're likely going to get really frustrated. Let's think back to our example earlier where I have the high interest item toys in the bin on my lap. The child's reaching for them, right? They're indicating that they want those toys. Let's say that our target word is more. So I'm going to sign and I'm going to say the word more while I have their attention, right? I'm incorporating my communicative temptations, I have my naming strategy, and I'm thinking about pausing. If the child doesn't sign or say more when I give them wait time and they're starting to get a little bit frustrated, I'm going to use that opportunity to sign and say more, right? They're still seeing it and hearing it. I'm not going to require that child to sign or say more to get that high interest item. So what that would look like is say more, say it, say it, say it, say more, say more, say more, say more, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to sign and say the word more once and reward them with that desired item. If they come back for another toy, right, because I have the bin of toys on my lap, if they want another block, they're reaching for it, again, I'm going to use that as an opportunity to sign and say more and give them a little pause. As you become more comfortable with the strategies, you can always up the frequency or how often you're using that strategy every day. So if you start by using a strategy for 10 or 15 minutes a day and it's going really well, you're becoming more comfortable with that strategy, maybe try using it for 20 or 25 minutes every day. And again, that can definitely be split up between 2 different periods of the day. Maybe I do 10 minutes in the morning and I do 10 minutes in the evening, right? I'm finding those opportunities where the child is engaged and interested in what we're doing. If you're intentional about using these early language strategies, you will see positive outcomes. Language learning takes time. I like to think of it as compounding consistency. So if you're consistent using 1 or 2 or more of these strategies every day, you're going to see results. Today we covered 6 different early language strategies. If you're interested in learning about another 6 early language strategies, check out my early language strategies PDF. It's for parents or SLPs and other professionals. I'd greatly appreciate it if you go hit that like button, subscribe for future videos, and definitely don't hesitate to leave a comment. Thanks everyone, see you in the next one.